Welcome to Love Bite.
My husband and I have been together since we were in high school. I got married right out of college. In January of 2005, when our kids were 10 and 13, he confessed to me that he had met someone and detailed an affair with a coworker, saying he was moving out to get an apartment with her. She was also married with kids the same age as ours and was telling her husband the same day he told me. I was numb. He moved out that day, but within a couple of days, he said he had made a mistake, wanted to come back home, and agreed to counseling. He swore to me that the affair with the coworker was over, and in fact, the woman now hated him and promised me that he wouldn't have anything to do with her and that she knew it. We discussed it at length, alone and in counseling, and I demanded that one of them quit. He told me that it was not possible due to their types of jobs, and he was concerned that if the affair was exposed, he could lose his job. I know that is bullshit now, but I was also dealing with a parent with a terminal illness, working full-time, and being a parent. Life went on, our kids grew up, and other life-altering events happened as they always do. I tried to not hold the affair over his head, but occasionally, in a fit of anger, I would make a snide comment about it, and he would always repeat that it was over when he told me it was and that she hated him. I was still quite angry, but I wanted to try again. In 2014, we went through another low spot, and he declared he was unhappy again. I asked him if we could go to counseling again to see if we could figure out what had driven us apart. At the time, in 2014, the counselor asked us about the affair back in 2005 details, who it was, and how it started, since she felt it had not been dealt with adequately. He repeated to her what he told me before, that it was over within 2 weeks of him leaving and that she hated him for backing out of their plan. I accepted it once again, as I did before. One thing that was new, though, was that his reasoning behind the entanglement was because he felt unsatisfied sexually and that I was not giving him the attention he desired. He said that the affair was between two very unhappy people in close proximity and had only lasted a couple of months. The therapist pressed him on the extent of the affair, and he told her that it was only making out. She asked if I had ever been unfaithful, and I said no, never, which was the truth. She asked my husband if he believed that, and he said no. He always thought I would revenge cheat to get back at him. Something I could never do. Period. I was offended that he thought that poorly of me. That was difficult to handle along with everything else. We worked through things in 2014. We stayed separated for 3 to 4 months, but he eventually moved back into our home, and we fully reconciled. The past 10 years have been the best of our marriage. We both feel and act that way. We are closer than we ever were, have time for each other, rarely argue, and I feel like I am where I need to be while I am with him. I truly consider him my best friend, and I can't imagine life without him. Fast forward to a month ago. I was looking for some blank DVDs for something I was doing for work and knew that we had consolidated most of those things in a drawer in his office. I asked him where they were, and he directed me to the spot, so I was in no way snooping. I opened up the drawer, and I noticed a stack of CDs in sleeves with notes folded with them. None of the CDs had writing on them, but they were each on a sleeve with a folded piece of paper. I found what I was looking for, the blank DVDs, finished my project, and set the CDs aside, thinking I could use the sleeves for my project. I initially thought these were something my husband had used for work, but then I noticed smiley faces and hearts drawn on the playlists as well as post-it notes. I opened the first one and saw handwriting that was for sure not mine, but was very feminine. The playlist was a mix of songs from the mid-2000s, and the first song was Red on a Rose. I could feel my blood rush out of my arms as I read down the list of songs. It continued, Nobody Knows, How Do I Live Without You, and Dido's White Flag. There were 19 songs on the first CD, and the sticker on it said, Close your eyes and go listen to number 1, Do It Now, with a heart. I popped in the CD, and I recognized every single song as something I had heard playing in my husband's office as he worked from home. Kenny Chesney, LeAnn Rimes, Women I Didn't Know the Name of the Song About Wanting to Prove Love. Never Giving Up, Wanting to Kiss, Wanting to Make Love. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but yet I knew I was looking straight into the mind of someone who was going down with this ship. It was quite pathetic, to be honest, and my blood was boiling. Altogether, there were 16 mixed CDs. I don't know how I did it, but I stopped and didn't open any CDs that night. I put it out of my head and went to bed. I acted like nothing happened. The next morning, I made breakfast, went back to where I was working on my project, and opened the second CD. It was another mix, very much like the first one, but it said, in the notations, "You might have some of these, but some are new. I will give you more later in person," involving that line. On that one, I recognized a few songs from 3 Doors Down. I plugged it into Spotify and looked at the whole album and then the release date. May 20th, 2008. My husband told me that he ended the affair in March 2005. He told the counselor the same thing in 2014. I don't know how I didn't completely lose it at that moment. I started going through all the CDs I could find and took pictures of everything. I could literally feel my heart beating in my entire body, and my head was about to explode. After spending hours checking each song, I was able to determine that the songs ranged in dates from 1999 to 2008. My husband was working on a project in the dining room. I walked in, holding the CDs in my hands, and asked if he had a moment for a question. He said yes. I set the first playlist down in front of him with the orange note and asked if he knew who that was from. He jumped backwards like I had set a snake in front of him and immediately said, "No," and I said, "Are you sure?" He shot back, saying that he couldn't remember something that happened so long ago. And he couldn't control what other people gave him. Anyway, it was ancient history. So I asked him, "When did your affair start?" He said the same kind of thing about not being able to remember what he ate for breakfast yesterday, so how was he supposed to remember that? Then I asked, "When did it end?" He looked like a caged animal. So I repeated what he had told me back then. It was over in February 2005, but I pointed out that the problem with that theory is that many of these songs were not released until late 2008, as I handed him the second CD. He wouldn't look at me. All he said was, "I know how this looks, and I can understand why you might not believe me, but look how great the last 10 years have been." I said, "You lied to me then. You are lying to me now." After about 10 minutes, he came into my room, where I was crying, and said that he really couldn't remember the exact details and that she had continued to try to get back together with him for several years. I looked it up on LinkedIn, and she had worked at the same place as him from 3 years before he started until 2008. I feel like this is such a weird situation. Technically, if the affair did end when she left, it was over 14.5 years ago. But it went on for much longer than I was told. I feel like I don't know what to believe now. I feel like he had plenty of time to tell me the actual truth about how long it lasted. I also realized that communication methods probably changed after she left, and from the look of the songs on the CDs, she was very much in love with him, and I could see no evidence of any hate. She is still married to the same man she was so unhappy with. I found her on Facebook and LinkedIn, and we have a few mutual friends. My husband still works at the same place as a director. On a side note, I found where her daughter was almost killed in a car accident exactly a week after he wanted to leave the second time in 2014, making me think they may have been planning on being together, but she couldn't. I love my husband, and I love our life together. But how do I know what to believe anymore? He says he loves me and wants us to work this out and agrees to go to counseling, but he also understands that if I decide I can't forgive him, he will have to accept that. But he also feels like this is ancient history and wants it all to go away.